Bom dia, Cordia. Welcome, Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 170, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. And as is customary, I start with a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon ar fud na crinne. Gamara Shiakon in our Jiley agus in our Jirha. Gunairi Lin Lenakrid Garamaka, Gamwich Buikas Chief, Jeh Chivdaka is Spirit Chivdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards not twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might see in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoyed the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into ploughshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So you're all very, very welcome. And Pat from Ulster, Hertfordshire, Sherwood Forest, Aberdeen, where it feels colder than it is, Wickham, Hampshire, Fort Washington, Kyiv, I don't know what it's like there, but I imagine cold. And then Lloyd is in, what did he say? Something lovely in sunny Gisborne in New Zealand, Castlegar in Canada, freezing Chicago, ouch, South London, chilly Hampshire, and Wyoming. You don't say how it is, Liz. But anyway, lovely to see you all. And Lincolnshire, great. Icy, snowy Pacific Northwest coast. Animi says it's very cold in my house. Okay, so you're all very, very welcome. Well, we're in the UK today, and my guest this evening is Julie Francis. Julie, you're so welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Julie, where are you?
I'm actually in the heart of the National Forest. So I'm in northwest Leicestershire, and we have, it used to be an old mining village, and then they decided that they would replant it after they did the open cast. And so we've got lakes and quite mature trees now. It's been planted for about 30, 40 years. So at the bottom of my garden, we've got a stream that runs down, past through woods, and it's all very, very lovely. Some fantastic walks and a canal in the village as well. So
sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
So just tell us, I don't know that place. So I know New Forest and Forest of Dean. So exactly where in the UK is it?
The National Forest, it's kind of like a conglomeration of small bits of woodland around Leicestershire and Derbyshire. It goes into Warwickshire and Staffordshire. Yeah, so because we're right in the heart of it, the closest place that some people in the country would know would be this rather charming little town called Ashby-de-la-Zouch, which sounds far posher than it actually is. But that's the epicentre of the National Forest.
Okay, well, Stephen Kent is Northwest Leicestershire too, just here as a guest. So I think that's what that thumbs up was for. So anyway, you're so welcome. So give us a little bit about your background.
I'm a retired English teacher. I decided to take early retirement when I was 54, which I'm incredibly lucky to have been able to do. And so I've spent the last coming up to 12 years now just engaging and doing stuff that I like. But I had 31 years teaching. I was a head of English at a Leicestershire high school. And my daughter and son-in-law and 6-year-old grandson live with me. And it's a nice life. Very lucky.
Brilliant. So tell us a bit about your spiritual background. How did you come to Druidry? How did you find Obod, and where were you? What kind of a background did you come from originally?
Originally, I was from CV background. Didn't really I went to a Church of England primary school, but I didn't really have an awful lot of choice in that. And probably by the time I was about 12, I decided that it wasn't hugely for me. And so I used to go for lots of, because it's a market town up in North Staffordshire. And so I used to go for lots of long walks in the countryside. And I'd look at the trees, and I'd look at the leaves falling off and then leaves coming back again. And thought, yeah, I'm kind of on board with reincarnation and stuff. So I started looking into Buddhism when I was about 12. And then, as a lot of kind of younger girls did, kind of went into it via Wicca. And then by the time I was probably about 23, 24, I'd kind of drifted in, because there's lots of different sects of Buddhism. It's a bit like, Christianity, you've got Catholics, and you've got Anglicans, you've got Methodists. And so I kind of went via Zen and ended up in a Tibetan Buddhist group. And that was really, really cool. And all the time, though, I was thinking it's not quite the kind of I don't believe in labels, because I think, we're not cans of soup. I don't need a label. But it's a good kind of flag to wave, so people go, oh, yeah, I know where you're from. And the only thing I could think of which would kind of summarize what I was a New Age pagan Buddhist. And so I went by that for a long time. And then back in, I think it was 2013, I got a little flyer for the Rainbow Druid Camp down in the Forest of Dean. And I decided to go to that. And I don't know how I'd managed to get in touch with Christopher Hughes, but I'd said, that I was going to be there, and I'd recently broken my wrist. So if we saw a woman wandering around with a cast, it would be me, and to give me a wave, which he did. And then this very kind lady took me on board, and she made sure that I wasn't going to break anything else. And she said, I'm a member of the Anglesey Druid Order. You should really join. They're brilliant. So I did. And she was quite right. They are absolutely brilliant. And then I managed to get onto a death midwifery course with Christopher as well, which was quite amazing. And kind of in all that, I thought, well, I'll kind of broaden out my understanding of Druidry. And so I joined OBOD, I think in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for you, what would you see? So many members of OBOD are also members of the Anglesey Druid Order. What would you see as the differences?
The differences. It's very language based, the Anglesey Druid Order. It's very specific to Wales and to Anglesey in particular. And because it's much smaller, we don't. Although with the online course, we've got a lot more members who have come from, they're coming from across the world now. Whereas before, when it was an in-person training, it was 4 weekends training up on Anglesey. You'd only have maybe 13, 14 people in the training group, and we all slept in this little this girl guide hut, and it was a really close community that we had. And because we were kind of on Anglesey itself, a lot of the training that we had was out in the landscape. So we never supposed to say what it is, not because it's secret, but because if other people do it, then it takes away the oh my God bit when they're actually there on the land going, this is amazing. So so we're just out on the land doing stuff, and it's magical. He weaves magic, does Mr. Hughes.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. I'm not a member of the Anglesey Druid Order, but I've been to any of his talks. I've been in his house, and he's amazing. Absolutely.
He is.
So when you think of, you talked about your forest background up in the National Forest, but in terms of where's the magic in Anglesey for you? In terms of landscape, what's the part that you look the best or the close to you?
Because I'm quite a history geek, and I'm very invested in the native indigenous tribes of this land. And I just recently had my Boudica tattoo finished,
lovely.
which is lovely. And of course, one of the things behind the Boudican revolt was the fact that Suetonius Paulinus was invading Anglesey at the time, because it was a stronghold to the Druids. And so and I know it's an historical centre of Druidry. and so it's got kind of provenance with it. And once you get onto the land, there's something very, very special about it. And because I'd initially gone up on my own, and then the next year my mate Sam, the amazing Sam Holland, came and joined up as well. And so when we go up to Anglesey now, we kind of both go together, and her family's from Anglesey. And so one of the places that we went to on one of the training weekends was actually where she used to play as a child. Wow. And so is, you know, and she, when we get to Anglesey and you go over the bridge, it's quite a special thing. She likes to go back up there, and her dad, when it comes back, her dad always cries when they leave Anglesey, because it's such a it grabs you, really. So yeah.
Does that have a name, that place? Is it that place where she played? Is that a sacred site, or it is a place where she played?
Well, the village where her father's family came from is very close to it, and it's lots of again. There's a lot of prehistoric monuments and lots of ancient stones in there. So yeah, when she was a kid, they just used to let her go and play in the fields, and the fields had these amazing.
And does it have a name?
It does.
You don't mean to say it. Okay, that's fine.
No, again, because it's kind of inherent in the training when you're on site. It's inherent, and I don't want to steal that magic from you. Go, okay. I'm up for a bit of that, yeah, but it's worth it.
It's interesting. So I always associated Anglesey with Holyhead. So if you were getting the boat from Dublin to Holyhead, the road takes you right off the island immediately. So all you see are these industrial buildings. Holyhead is just industry and port, and that's it. And then to discover, years later that, oh, no.
Well, I say to me, we do winter and summer solstices. There are public rituals at Brynkessley D, which is this amazing Neolithic tomb, which archaeologists have discovered that it actually the foundations of it go back maybe 6,000 years. So it's this incredibly ancient site, and the whole island is just scattered with these incredible things. And of course, you've got Llyncerrig back, where they found lots of votive offerings that have been thrown in over many years, and it's a special place. And the beaches are nice.
Beautiful. So, I know you don't like labels, but have you brought? I mean, I've had many of my guests have come from a particular spiritual background. Some have said, "I'm leaving it. I was hurt by it. I'm never ever going back there again, and I'm so glad I'm a Jewish, or maybe identifies a bit." And then there are others will say, "No, I bring my Christianity with me. That is really important, or I bring my Buddhism, my Hinduism, whatever it is." So, is there any way that you weave in your Buddhism into your Druidic practice?
Well, I think because with Tibetan Buddhism in particular, it was based on the Bon tradition, which was quite a shamanic, nature-based religion anyway in Tibet. So there's a place that I went to work at in Ireland, the Dzogchen Bearer Buddhist Centre. They've got, they do sangs, and a sang is a particular ritual where they go out in the mornings and they light incense and they burn woods, and they do it to offer thanks to the native spirits of the land, as well as all the Buddhist teachers. So it's quite a nature-based thing anyway, really. And also because I have no idea why. Well, I do know why. After my husband died, the thing with Buddhism is, once you've gone, then you've either got to wait for another life until you meet somebody that you love again, or they've reached nirvana and that's it, game over. And I thought, I don't want that. When I die, I'd really like God to kind of be there waiting for me. And because I love church buildings, and I love Pugin in particular, who was a Gothic architect from the Victorian times, who designed the Houses of Parliament, and he designed the Catholic church at the top of the road where I was born in Cheadle. And I knew that and in Birmingham, which is about 30 miles away from us, I knew there was a Catholic cathedral that he had designed. So I went to have a look around that, went down to the crypt, had a cup of coffee. This little elderly Irish nun called Sister Mary Joseph sat by me. By the time we finished our coffee, she signed me up for catechism classes. So I spent 2 years. I can't say no, Eimear. So so I spent 2 years being a Catholic, and all my kind of cradle Catholic friends were horrified because I really enjoyed it, because it was like, I think what Dion Fortune said, if you want to see a Western mystery tradition ritual done well, you go to a traditional Catholic mass. And it was the bells and the smells and the whole ritual of it. I remember once, I think it was going for May Day, and I'd never been to one before. And these little groups of children walked down, and it was Our Lady of Lourdes, my church in Ashby. And they had this little statue of Our Lady of Lourdes, and they carried her down, and then they set her on a cushion. Then they crowned her with a circlet of Mayflowers. And I was sitting there going, guys, this is really pagan. Whoa, okay. So so I really enjoyed it. And then I realised that the fact that I wasn't actually a Christian was probably a bit of a disadvantage. So so I left then. And
were you baptised as a Catholic?
No.
Okay.
No. I was baptised as C of E, and I remember when I went to talk to the local priest, who was a Monsignor, and I said, well, of course, the Bishop of Lichfield confirmed me. And he went, was that Anglican? I went, yeah. He said, oh, well, that doesn't count. Okay, so I was actually confirmed by Cardinal Vincent Nichols. He wasn't cardinal when he did me, but yeah. And Catholics are crazy people around here. They're just up for a great laugh. And I loved it, but I didn't
it's funny, the only guilt the Catholics really suffer from is about sexual guilt. The rest, they can have fun, they can dance, they can have a drink, they can eat, where certain Protestants can't have fun and can't dance and sing. It depends on whichever sect it is.
Yeah.
And I remember having a Protestant Catholic or colleague, and she said, I always envied you Catholics growing up, because you could have fun. You could do things we couldn't. And I thought, we had loads of sexual guilt, but if that's the only one, and not doing so badly, but yes. Yeah. But it's interesting you talking about that procession and putting the Mayflowers. It's only occurred to me that it was always important for Catholics to have a May altar, and for the month of May, which is the month of Mary, but that you would always have flowers from nature. You would bring that in, and it's like it is so nature based, but without it being labelled as. You're looking at these threads, of course, with holy wells and certain sacred hills and mountains that were all pre-Christian anyway. So Liz says it's so interesting to hear impressions of Catholicism from outsiders. So different from my memories growing up Catholic. Not impressed by any of the things. Well, I'm trying to learn some compassion too, Liz. And it's interesting that person said to you about those wonderful rituals done well. I found the Mass very empty, but what I did love was Benediction, which is still Latin for blessing. And that was chanting, incense, candles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I always loved. And of course, you see that perhaps in any spiritual tradition, apart from the more austere, say, Protestant ones, where they say there's no intercessory between you and God, and you go straight up, and there's no frills.
That's right. I loved the I say with the Catholic Church, the St. Giles Catholic Church in Cheadle, and Pugin called it his gem. It's Pugin's gem, and there is not a square centimetre in that church that is not painted and decorated. It is a smorgasbord of colour when you go in there. And compared to the CV church that I had to go to, which was just white walls and a few stained glass windows, I thought, this is pretty rubbish, really, compared to the church at the top of my road. But it was. We had a great time. And when we were because when we did the Biero retreat with you, my mate Sam and I, we'd spent a week on Bear, and then we came up to Donegal, and we were driving past Knock, and because Sam always says her mum's got a hotline to the Pope. I said, what a good girl, what a good daughter you'd be if you brought your mum a rosary from Knock. And she went, oh God, do we have to? I was going, God, let's go do it. And she managed it for about, I don't know, for about 20 minutes, and then PTSD took over from her completely. We had to leave. It was just too traumatic for us. So, you know, I appreciate a lot of cradle Catholics don't get why I bloody loved it. Apart from the fact that I wasn't a Christian.
Well, I was brought up a very strict Catholic household, and my parents were married in Knock, but my mother never took us to Knock, and she was born near there, and I remember the buses would go every year from every village in Ireland on a pilgrimage to Knock, and they used to say rosaries, 3 rosaries on the way and 3 rosaries on the way back. That was my idea of hell, because I was never religious as a child.
Yeah.
So my mother, her place was Medjugorje, and my father used to go to Lourdes. Knock. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And I haven't been to the Basilica, but and now
it's lovely. It is lovely. It's very calming and very. It's not over the top. It's not kind of gaudy. Because one of the things which I love a lot is I love Catholic tat. I love it.
You?
I love Catholic tat. It's one of my favourite things. I can't explain it, but yeah. So there you go.
What good Protestants were called graven images.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
but they're no fun.
Well, it's interesting because Howard, my late husband, he wasn't a Quaker, but he had Quakers in his family, and he went to a Quaker boarding school. So he learned the Bible as an historical document, and every Sunday they went to a meeting in the meeting house, and he loved the no ritual, and he loved the silence and waiting, and the no dogma, and the no elderhood, and he just loved sitting in silence until the Spirit moved somebody to speak. So when we were getting married, now we weren't Druids at the time, and I certainly didn't want. I wasn't going to do a Catholic because I've been married before in a Catholic church and divorced, living in sin now. And then I wanted. So I had a friend who was a solitary witch, and another friend who was the MC, and it was out in the open. So we had a pagan ceremony. And then Howard says, "Okay," because he was a bit worried about the ritual bit. He was very reluctant. And then he said, "As long as we can have a 2-minute silent place." A piece for a silence, that if somebody's moved to speak, they could. And we did. And it was just absolutely beautiful. Now, Catholics are not comfortable with silence. I was talking to a priest friend of the family's years ago about, there's a part in the ritual where they say, and now we'll pause for a moment of silence to remember those who've gone before us. And invariably, I would be thinking in my head, those who've gone before us. And I'd have gotten to the second person when he'd go, in the name of the Father, blah, blah, blah. And I go, this really frustrates me. What is wrong with silence?
Yeah.
And it was 2 years later at a funeral that he was leading, and he came up to me and he says, "Eimear, I've never forgotten. I always leave time in the silence." So it's a really interesting one. That then I was so hurt by ritual or angry about it, and I couldn't mention that prayer or God. And then joining Obod, although before that I was curious about ritual. Meaning, and that didn't have a dogma attached to it. And Obod really provided that for me. A beautiful framework, the ritual book that we get, the Wheel of the Year, a nice scaffold to hang your own ritual practice, which was just beautiful and just wonderful. So, and interesting, I think Sylvia Thorne says the mass is ceremonial magic. Well, I had a huge problem with the notion of transubstantiation. I thought, this is a load of woo-woo, you can't have this. And when I became a Druid, I now understand it.
Yes.
That transubstantiation from symbol to the real and back and forth and how. So really, really interesting. And Catherine says, I tried most faiths until I'm very happy with paganism. I think it's kind of Druidess in the order or something great. Yeah. Yeah. And you still weave in your Buddhism into your Druidry?
Yes, well, pretty much so. I mean, my because I've always had this approach to life as thinking that the universe leaves breadcrumbs. And so what I've always done is I've followed a trail of breadcrumbs. So I've gone somewhere and I thought, oh, okay. And then I go that way, and then I go that way, and then I go that way. And so over the past kind of 5 years, my druidry has kind of extended into shamanic practice as well.
Okay.
Because, you know, do you think the druids were the kind of the original shamans of this country anyway? And again, it really does. It's a good complementary thing to it. So again, it's just about sitting in silence out on the land, listening and watching and just waiting for, like you say with Howard, you know, waiting for the spirit to come, waiting for something to go, this is what you need to do. And so I quite like that. I like how they've kind of blended together. So the bit of Buddhism and a bit of shamanic practitioner and me druidry, and yeah.
And I think it's important, that silence, that stillness, that still center of my being, and waiting, because we don't summon and manipulate,
No.
but sitting in the silence and waiting for Imas to come, or Awen, just that space, and wait for it to happen. So Moira Nidu says, me too, I love that analogy, breadcrumbs. And it is. And breadcrumbs are ephemeral. They're not there forever. Like pebbles are. When you the Hansel and Gretel story, they come maybe at the right time, and you need to be observant that they're available, which is lovely. Because often there's a negative connotation to breadcrumbs, that you're only getting the bits, but actually breadcrumbs are really good for making stuffing.
They are. And plus, if you get too much, you don't kind of value it as such. If everything was just kind of handed on a plate, and you go, well, this is everything, boom, there you go, then it'd be a bit boring, really, and it wouldn't be ours. And something that you know, that Christopher Hughes has always said, which has always struck me, one of his best things is, we are the universe singing in praise of itself. And so each of our songs is completely unique for us. And so therefore it's up to us to kind of mine what's in here, and to work out what's our song. Because without our tune, without our note, the universe's harmony would be lacking something. So I don't want to sing somebody else's song. You know, I want to find out what my song is and go out and blast it out when nobody can hear me. But yeah, you know. So, yeah.
That is so beautiful. So beautiful. So now I know you do write some poetry, and I know you're very, very shy.
I am.
So you have read one at the Bureau retreat, and your son Gordon, or your husband Gordon. But before you go to, I ask you to read it. Where do you get your Awen or your Imas from?
From being outside, really, and it over the past kind of 6 or 7 months, in particular, from birds, really. I've suddenly become mildly obsessed with birds, and in particular, the thing that kind of swung it for me was that at one of the because I do my shamanic practitioning stuff with Manda Scott, the author who wrote the books, and I went to a shamanic healing weekend where we were kind of being trained as how to do that. And one of the journeys that we went on, you then kind of feedback and say, oh yeah, this is what I saw. And my thing was, you know, it doesn't matter if what you think doesn't make sense to anybody else. It has to make sense to you. And if you ever see a blue jay's feather, this is a sign that it's important. And I went, oh, okay. And I thought, well, yeah, I've seen maybe one jay in my garden in the past 30 years that I've lived here. And at the end of the kind of the session, Manda came over to me and says, there's a blue jay feather in the centre of the altar, and I'm going to give it to you. So, you know, I'd got this blue jay feather from the centre of the kind of the altar cloth. And I was talking to somebody on a Zoom call, completely random Zoom call that we just got put into. And we were supposed to kind of do this journey where you were leaving things and picking things up and stuff. And then we were supposed to ask each other about stuff. And I said, well, what did you leave? And she said, I left a blue jay feather. And I thought, okay. So then I started noticing the birds, and you know, the loveliness of them, really. So yeah. So nature and birds.
It's beautiful, those synchronicities that happen at the right time. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, I experience them regularly, and people tell me when we have conversations about synchronicities,
Yeah.
and they never ever fail to
Mm.
just wow me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's another wonderful synchronicity,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I remember probably a couple of months after my husband died, I was in Brighton because my sister lives near Brighton, and I'd just have a little mooch around before I came back home, and I just popped into this crystal shop, and they did tarot readings. And I thought, I'll have a tarot reading, I'm up for one of that. And this tarot reader was also apparently a medium, and I'm always very skeptical of mediums. I think it's a lot of cold reading going on. And she was saying some really interesting things, and she gave me a bit of amethyst, saying, he says this is for you, which was interesting because, he always used to buy me amethyst stuff. And I was going, okay. And then right at the end, she said, he's saying, you are the wind beneath my wings. And I thought, really unlike Gordon to have referenced a Bette Midler song, but
Yes.
okay. And so I went and got in my car, and it's like, it's this kind of 4-hour drive up the M23, around the M25, up the M40. And I always listen to Radio 4 because I like listening to talking. And about halfway up the M40, I thought, I just need something else. And without looking at which station I pressed the car radio just as Bette Midler was singing, you are the wind beneath my wings. And how I didn't drive off the motorway is beyond me. Because I thought, yeah, okay, that's a big enough prod. I get that one.
That's just so, so lovely. Oh, wonderful. Would you like to read the poem now? I think this is the time.
Yeah, if you would like me to.
I think our viewers would.
Oh, bless them. They're very they're very kind. Yeah, so I mean, we'd known each other for about 20 years before we got together. I met him first when I was a week away from my first marriage, and he was a year into his first marriage. And when you kind of know that that's the person you should have been with. And so it took kind of 20 years for us to get together, and 2 divorces. And so this was something that I wrote for him really very, very early on, when we used to sneak away so the kids didn't know that we were seeing each other. And it was just about the speed in which, Einstein always said, your hand on a hot woman and an eternity can last for a second. Your hand on a hot ring and a second can last like an eternity. So it was that idea of how time is it's flexible depending upon the joy that you have. So anyway, so it's caught in a fleeting eternity. Memories of your warmth and laughter permeate my soul. Softly you breathe around the edges of my mind. Slowly you infuse my body with longing. I do not need to see you to want you, nor touch you to feel. You live within me, waiting by the quiet moments of each day to bring me hallowed treasures of dappled sunshine and shadowed moonlight, stolen jewels of heaven to reflect my love for you. There you go.
That is so, so, so beautiful. And that was early in your relationship.
Yeah. And then he wrote songs for me, and when we first got together, I used to write him letters every day, and he would keep them, and then he would write back to me in a book. And so when he came to visit, I would then go away with a book, and I'd read all the replies to all the letters that I'd written to him. And so now they're kind of stored together by my bed. So I know.
There's a beautiful reaction, beautiful. No words. That was beautiful.
Mm.
The expression of the missing part, super evocative. That's lovely. So,
thank you.
But I'm not surprised. So, you mentioned earlier with some of the studies that you did with. Just something. This is Hannah. How lovely! I feel the art of letter writing is dying. Indeed, yes.
Mm. I used to do a lot of it in my lessons, though. So when the kids were reading in the lessons, and I'd be writing and scribbling away, they thought I was doing something terribly important, which I was. But I was writing to Gordon. Yeah,
just beautiful. And Pat Booker says nothing is better as a keepsake of someone than a box of their letters. Yes, indeed. So Yeah, you said you'd studied with death 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 midwifery with Christopher.
Yes.
Um, so just tell us a little bit about that and how that has helped you. I mean, obviously you're doing it maybe from a professional point of view, but also
Yeah.
personally when you think of the loss of Gordon, etc. Or
Mm,
when
mm.
had you done it? Had you done it before he passed or afterwards?
No, I actually did it afterwards, mainly because I'd I'd done his funeral as well, and it was such an uplifting, positive experience that I thought I'd like to be able to share this with other people. So I did that afterwards, and Chris, of course, having done postmortems and stuff and worked with the dead, it was really interesting. I'd got a lot of facts, so I kind of read up before, and I knew that how to store the body if you're going to keep it at home and things. And I was able right at the end of it to go and say, this is what I did with my husband. Was it right? And he went, you couldn't have done better. And that made, because I was never sure. I was never sure whether what I'd done was the best thing I could have done, if you know what I mean. Because I said it took us 20 years to actually get together. And then we got married after 2 years of being together. And then 15 months into the marriage, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And because I was a Buddhist, and so he knew a lot about what I thought about death anyway. And we decided we'd go somewhere amazing for our holiday. And so we went to Ireland. We went to Kerry, and we fell in love with Ireland. And it is one of the greatest regrets of my life that I apparently do not have any Irish DNA. And I would skin a small child for Irish blood, but I wouldn't. But sadly, I don't have any. But we both fell in love with Ireland. And then the next year when we went back, Gordon said, "Well, look, we'll go back to the same place because it was so beautiful. We had it's right opposite the Skellig Isles. It was amazing." He said, "But I know that there's a Buddhist place just down the road, and I think we should kind of split the time with us doing your Buddhist stuff and then going on and just doing kind of touristy Irish things," which is what we did. And I'd never been to this Buddhist retreat before, and it is at the arse end of nowhere. It is the furthest distance from Dublin that you can get. It's right on the tip. It is not just in West Cork. It is right on the tip of the Beara Peninsula. It's down by Castletown Bear, just as it kind of curves round and then kind of comes back up to Kenmare and then goes back out to Kerry. And it was the most astonishingly beautiful place. And as soon as we set our feet on the ground, we thought, we're home. And it was a sacred land. It was so quiet. There was it was literally a pilgrimage to get there. Once you'd left, say, Castletown Bay, you had another 20 minutes of driving on little roads, and then you come off down this really tiny kind of track. Astonishing place. And I'd gone to the people there and I said, look, my husband's been diagnosed with lung cancer. Is there anybody that can talk to him about how to prepare for dying with the Buddhist tradition? And they went, yeah, we'll send somebody down to have a word with you. And so they sent me this amazing woman called Mary Moore. And her and Gordon hit it off with everybody. There wasn't anybody I ever knew who didn't fall in love with him. But him and Mary hit it off. And she taught him the Poa practice. And the Poa practice in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, is where you visualize, you spend hours and hours visualizing something in front of you. And it could be God, it could be Mary, it could be light, it could be the heart mind of the universe. Names don't matter. What it is this kind of source of love and belonging and oneness. And so you have this particular practice where you do chanting and you do the visualization, you build the visualization up until a particular moment when you concentrate on just kind of throwing your consciousness into this being, and then you merge with the being, and then you just rest in the light. And it's a beautiful practice. It doesn't have to be done with people who are dying, and you do it regularly so that if you get knocked down by a bus, you've got it embedded in you enough to still do it in the moment. That's the theory behind it. And so, you know, he loved that, and they did little special videos for him, so when we brought it home, he could listen to it and stuff. And then, because we kept going, we had to go back every year then, because, you know, he'd absolutely fallen in love with the place. And sorry, it's one of my favorite things. Like the meditation in the shrine room is on the cliffs of Bantry Bay. And so the main shrine room, they now built a whole Tibetan temple which has the same view, but you've got glass walls that just look out over the Atlantic Ocean, so there is nothing but ocean in front of you, and it is amazing. So we had to keep going back, and then Mary had been contacted by this young set of filmmakers who were interested in pitching an idea to Channel 4 for a program that was called 3 Minute Wonder. And it was just a little 3 minute, I should imagine from the title, a 3 minute film. And they said, we want to do it so that it's people who are facing the very worst thing in their lives, but they've got a positive reaction to it. Do you know anybody that can help? And she went, as it happens, I do. So they got in touch with us, and they were brilliant. They kind of flew us out there, and they filmed him in the shrine room. And it's so lovely now to know that at any time I can go back and watch him talking about dying, and saying that, you know, I remember he said, you know, I could have been taken like that, but it hasn't happened for me like that. So I feel like I've been given a gift, a chance to be able to get my shirt straight and pull my socks up and go, I'm ready now. And it was that kind of positive approach to it, which I think touched everybody that he met. And when they said, you know, we want to build this place called a spiritual care centre at Sodgenbera, and that'll be like it'll be like a Buddhist hospice. So people can go for respite care, they can go if they just need a break, they can go when they're dying. And he loved that so much that he'd lived for 2 years with the cancer. And the last kind of year to 18 months, he just raised money to help build a spiritual care centre. And when it had been kind of all the permissions had been given out and everything, I was then invited over with one of my mates, and we met Mary McAleese. And she'd come as the president. The president of Ireland, and we went, and we had this big thing where she was kind of not unveiling it because it hadn't been built, but, you know, starting off the process, which was lovely. And then, because he was starting to get more ill, we had to stop going. But our friend Mary Moore, the one who'd practiced with him, she'd gone into a 3-year retreat in Lerabling in France. And so she was there for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks and 3 days. But she used to ring him to see if he was all right. And on their last phone call, right at the end, he said, okay, well, I'll see you soon. And she said, now put the phone down. I thought, what does he mean? He'll see me soon. He knows I'm here for 3 years. So she said, so I went to talk to Rinpoche, the man who was in charge, and said, you know, this has happened. I've been working with this man. He's dying. And he said, what do I do? Because I'm in a 3-year retreat. He said, well, we'll call for an oracle. So in Tibet, they've got these, you know, really quite shamanistic oracles who come and tell you what you should do. And so they called the oracle, and the oracle went, go. And so she arrived on my doorstep the evening before he died. And she was able to do the power practice with him, because he said he didn't want to die in a hospital. God love the doctors and nurses, but they can't be there and they can't give you spiritual help. So he wanted to die at home. The founder of the Sodgenbera Buddhist retreat, his wife died of cancer, and he had the same thing. So he just made sure that where she ended up, everything that she looked at was something that she loved. And so I took that on board. And so he died in this room, in my bedroom. And everything that was here was something that would remind him of beauty or something that we'd done. And we brought, because it goes down into the garden, I brought all the flowers up into the room as well. So it was an amazing place. And again, that was something I'd learned from Sodgenbera. So he died here. And when Mary came, she said, well, you go off and you have a night's sleep, because you've not had any night's sleep. I will sit vigil with him. And so she did. And in the morning when I came downstairs, she said, it's closed now. It's closed now. She said, I'm going to go and have a shower so you too can, have your last moments. Because he was on a morphine drip by then, and I knew that he wanted to die conscious. And so I'd turn, and this is why I needed to talk to Christopher, I'd turn the morphine down so that he was aware of what was going on. And I remember kneeling by the side of the bed, and he looked at me, and he hadn't been able to look at me to focus for several days because of the cancer. And so I got that amazing gift of being able to go, I love you. So many people love you. It's okay to go. We'll be okay. And I thought, because I knew what he was like, because he was a shining, glorious man. I thought, he's not going to go because of me. So I said, I promise you, I will be okay. Every breath that I take, I will take for you. Every step that I walk, I will walk for you until I can do it for myself. And he went, and then he kind of closed his eyes, and Mary kept, so it was just so wonderful to have that moment with him. And Mary came down, she said, we've got to do it now, Jules. So we did the power practice, and there's a moment where you have that transference of consciousness. And when it got to that stage, he gave 3 breaths and then he was gone. And it was so peaceful and so beautiful in the room that it was a sacred experience. It wasn't just, I've lost the love of my lives. It was this sacred gift that I felt had been given. And it was wonderful. It was obviously heartbreaking, but it was wonderful. And then I didn't want, one of the things that I find most upsetting about the modern view of death is that somebody dies, the doctor's called, they write a death certificate, they're sent to the undertaker, you don't see them again, or they come back in a box, And I think that is such a separation of us from this experience, which can be quite transformative. And so I made sure that he stayed here. So he stayed in the bed. And then his family could come and sit with him, and and I made sure to keep the curtains closed. It was June, to keep the curtains closed, try and keep the place as cold as possible. And it was very healing for his family who hadn't been there with him, to be able to have that chance to talk to him on their own. And then when the undertaker said, we're going to have to take him very soon, I think I kept him for about 3 or 4 days. He said, do you want me to come and sort him out? I went, no, I don't want you to do that. It's fine. So I washed him and I dressed him, because I wanted the hands that touched him last to be hands that had loved him. I'm sorry. And so I put his best stuff on. I wrapped his mala beads in with him. And then when he came back, because I'd said we wanted a motorcycle sidecar and hearse, because he was a biker. So they came, and they said, well, I said, bring the coffin into the house. And I had to go off to the crematorium because I needed to lay the set, because we've got a whole set going on of all his swords, all his guitars, all his, his music was playing. It was a 3-ring circus that I got planned. And I said to my girls, when people come to the door, make sure you tell them it's an open coffin. And they went, yes, Mum, of course he will. And of course they didn't. So all these people came in expecting just to see a coffin, and it was an open coffin. Bit of a shock to them, but everybody was game, and everybody put stuff in his coffin. So little photos and badges and little notes and stuff. So as one of his brothers put a joint in there, so he could go off, and he was surrounded by love and by little goodbyes from people, which was amazing. And I had a double funeral, and at the end the undertaking came and said, we've got to go. This is the first time I've had a double funeral. It should have been a triple funeral, but we really need to move on now. And it was fabulous. It was a joyous celebration of life, and it was transformative, really. And I think all people should be able to have the opportunity to be able to say goodbye like that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I remember being brought up as a good Catholic. We were all told to pray for the grace of a happy death. I used to think this was so funny. We used to laugh at this.
Yeah.
And then I was a nurse,
Mm.
and I saw people who had good deaths and not so good deaths. I was
Mm.
with my father when he died, and I was grateful to have been with him. I was there as he breathed his last.
Mm.
And then when Howard had his diagnosis, I said, "Now, if this is malignant, this is terminal.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
want to be there when you breathe your last. Do not wait till I've left the room.
Mm.
I'll never hold you back, but I want
Yeah.
to be there. Promise me."
Yeah.
And I was there, and he was ready to go when he was ready to go. And like you, I laid him out.
Mm.
Coach was another member of the order, a friend, and my sister, who's a nurse.
Mm.
My kids, we were all around the family, and then the three of us, laid him out, and I spent the night with him. And then the undertaker did come the next day to. I won't go into the details, but I kept him at home for 5 days, and he was waked at home, as in Ireland wakes. You see the body
Yeah.
in a wicker coffin, and
Yeah.
we had a Druid ceremony in the Grove in our garden, and he's
Wow.
buried there. And we
Fabulous.
just a wonderful undertaker.
Yeah.
And my kids dug the grave, so
Yeah.
it was like, and neighbours came. There would be a tradition of
Mm.
digging the grave, and then big conversations over, and
Mm.
it was just beautiful.
Mm.
And I did
Mm.
think I would find it hard when the coffin was going into the ground, and it was like,
Mm.
oh, I'm seeing him home. He's going back into the mother.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So having the death that he had and the
Yeah.
conversations, being able to prepare his funeral with him, that was what really helped me with my grief.
Mm.
Where things, if sudden death can be hard, I would have been angry, I think. And then if it's hospital and the medics and all the professionals take over, and you're in shock, and then you're not able to assert yourself or to say what you might like, if it's not been discussed beforehand, and then you end up kind of regretting. And luckily, he was in pain. He had a morphine as well, but it was only in the last few hours that he needed more. It was great that you were able to honour his wish, turn down the pump, so that he could engage with you. I had a client, I'm a psychologist, and he used to say, talk about a friend who was fully conscious at his own death, and he said, I want to be conscious at my death. And I don't think it was just, I want to be awake, but it was like, I am conscious that I am passing over, rather than dying unconsciously. And many people die in their sleep. I think it's a nice way to go. But I wanted to be able to step through that veil consciously, which I think is a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the death midwifery course that I did with Chris, he was talking about how, like at the end when you're doing funerals, that you are acting as a psychopomp, and you are taking the person from the community and passing them over to the other world, so that people can say goodbye. And I think the worst thing that can happen is I've been to car crash funerals where nobody really knows anyone, and it's awful. But it was because it was really interesting because after he died, I went back and I did some volunteering at Soggenbera, and then when the spiritual care centre was built, I got the opportunity to go and live and work there, and so I volunteered there for a year. And I opened my curtains in the morning, and I had the Atlantic Ocean out my window. It was an amazing place, and one of the things that I enjoyed doing was telling my story, because life is about stories. If we don't have stories, we're a story species. What do we do? And so I used to tell my stories, then people used to tell me their stories, and the number of people that would go, yeah, because when I was a little girl, if we knew somebody in the village was dying, we'd stop by them on the way to school, and then when they died, we'd come and sit by the coffin. And I was thinking that's such a healthy way of approaching death. And in England, you'd really have to be very lucky to find anything like that at all, because they pack them away, bring them back, they're nailed in, that's it. And it's a waste, really. But talking of wakes, the cottage on the cliff, because you can stay in cottages on the cliff at Soggenbera, the one that we always used to stay at, the night that he died, somebody, Christie, is it, from the Dubliners? There's a famous Irish musician.
Christy Moore was not a Dubliner. Christy Moore. He's not of the Dubliners, but yes.
But it was either Christy Moore or it was somebody from the Dubliners, and they were staying in this cottage, and people came down and said, we just wanted to come in because this was a really special place to Gordon, and he died this evening, and he had Gordon's wake there on the cliffs of Bantry Bay, and they all sang for God.
Oh, not beautiful.
He'd have bloody loved that.
No, I know. It's the thing is to be missing your own funeral. It's
Oh.
funny. I was watching I can't remember, something on Netflix maybe, but it was a film, a kind of a Hollywood thing. But this couple meet on a plane coming from the US over to London, and it turns out that the guy is going to the memorial for his mother, and the girl's going to a wedding. Anyway, but the girl discovers that no, the mother. She then turns up to the memorial thinking the mother is dead. No, it's a living memorial, and they're all Shakespearean actors. So all the people come as their favorite character, and then they do little vignettes, and then they tell her, the woman who's dying, what they think.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not waiting until you die. We're now going to tell you now. And what a lovely thing, because I know Howard, I was like, God, he'd have missed this. I've heard this so many times. My God, he would have loved his funeral. It's a pity. And I mean, you could say maybe at one level he is, but there's something about the physical experience of it rather than the energetic experience. And I thought, what a lovely idea to say, okay, I'm going, but you know what? I want you to say nice things now, assuming that they will say nice things, of course.
Well, if they don't say nice things, then, you know, you don't invite them.
Right, only the nice ones, yes. I just thought it was lovely.
Yeah, it's a fabulous idea. And I mean, one of my cousins died a couple of years ago. He was only 50. And there were lots of people coming up and saying, you know, fantastic things about him. And my sister had just, you know, she wrote on Facebook, things that we say at funerals, we should say at parties. And I thought, yeah, we absolutely should. Don't ever miss an opportunity to tell people you love them. And then again, one of the things that Gordon used to say was, you know, he was really thankful to have this chance to you know, to say my thank yous, to say my goodbyes, and tell people I really loved you. And so they'd got that going forward, rather than, you know, 1 minute they're there, and then they've gone. So
that's right. My kids were young when my husband died. So Quaylen was 13 and my son was 16. And Howard wrote to them 2 weeks before he passed, and he dictated it to me. And then about 2 weeks after he passed, I said, because they were teenagers and they were not talkers, not about grief. And I gave each of them their letter. And that's something they have treasured, that he could talk to them about how much he loved them, but also how he saw them. How much he admired them. Just beautiful. And what a gift, because so many people don't get that chance, or we're not. People are afraid of being too morbid or too afraid, but there's nothing having a conversation with people about what you would like.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my friends said that he'd bought his mum. Am I allowed to swear?
You can.
Okay. He bought this death planner called "Fuck It, I'm Dead," and and you could go through and say, you know, all the things that, you know, people I don't want, people I do want. This is what I want to do. You know, this and that. And, you know, there's nothing people can do about it because it's written down now, and I'm dead. And I thought that's a really brilliant idea as well. And I thought I'd quite like to have a go at doing something like that. Only maybe without. Yeah, but I'd like to do that.
But the thing is, by having something prepared, those who are left, the bereaved, know what to do. Where others go, well, they weren't particularly religious, but they were. That was the tradition they were brought up in, but they never practiced. Do you do that? Do you something else? Or maybe they had a private spiritual practice we don't know anything about. So having it prepared to say what you would like, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Karen says, my neighbour was at a living funeral last year. They said it was lovely. It was also in the local pub, and so many friendships were rediscovered. Now, isn't that lovely? Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, because we're here for such a short time, you know, and it seems so ridiculous that we don't bother talking about things that matter, you know.
Indeed. Is there, before we move on to another, because we're coming to the end of our time, but what would you, when you think of what you've learned about death and grief and bereavement, what advice would you give, or and last comments you'd like to make on that?
What I would like to say is I would like to quote from Gordon in his 3-minute wonder, and he said, what I would do, he said, to anybody who's been diagnosed with a potentially fatal illness, do not get lost in the oh my God bit of it, because you are still alive, you are still breathing, you still are, and until your final breath, that's how it will be. And I thought, yeah, don't. One of the things that I found was I didn't want to mourn him while he was still alive, because I knew that further down the line I would give anything to have him back for a minute or whatever. And so I was very much, this moment is all we've got, and don't squander it. It doesn't matter. We could go out tomorrow and get knocked down by a bus. We don't know. Tomorrow or the next life, we don't know. So don't waste time on stuff and nonsense, really, and tell people you love them, and appreciate the sunrise and the sunsets and the silence and the stars, and just go for shenanigans as much as you can.
I use that word, but so does Christopher Hughes. I mean, I would add to that what we did was live as fully as you can for as long as you can. And yes. I remember when my son was born, and my midwife, this is in the house, and so he was a tiny little baby on my shoulder, and I remember saying, at first time mother, anxious, worried about, the idea. Well, they call them cot deaths, but in the first year of life, and she said something you cannot control, but she said, you know what, just love him for as long as you have him. And her saying that, the relief, okay, that's the only thing I can do. Yeah. And if I can love him as much as I can for as long as I have him, isn't that a lovely philosophy?
Yeah. It really is. It really is. And particularly with children, I read somewhere that someone said, the days are long, but the years are short.
That's right, yes.
And you think, yes. I look at my girls now and they're like in their 30s, and I think, but I remember them when they were little and they were so cute. And but luckily now I've got a 6-year-old grandson who's the light of my life, so I can just spoil him now instead. So
that's just beautiful. Actually, Ishfaq says, is there a Druid ceremony for death? I mean, we've Druid celebrants. There's River Jones does a celebrancy course on. I did the first one. God, it was just a few months after Howard had died. I'd already done his funeral, and on I can't remember what it's called, end of life rites. Yes, there are. So if you contact the office maybe, or look up River Jones, Ishfaq, you can find it. Yeah. And so, just before we end, one thing concerns you about the modern world.
The way in which we seem to have lost our connection with the planet, really. And I think if you view the world around you as living, then you would take a lot more care of it. And we don't. We've had 2,000 years of thinking that we have domination over the world, and animals don't matter, and the rivers don't matter, and there's no life on a dead planet, and we need to remember that. And sadly, a lot of the people, particularly who seem to be in power at the moment, don't seem to have an appreciation of that at all. Okay,
and so what gives you hope then?
My grandson. Because he's sweet and he's cute and he's loving, and last night when he's going to bed, my son-in-law took him upstairs to bed, and through the little monitor I could hear Gareth going, "And don't forget I love you." And I thought,
sweet.
Lovely little boy. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just Ishfaq, there is a death cafe run by John King. In the order, it's probably a death cafe circle in on the hearth if you have a look. That might help you as well. So I haven't asked this question in a long time. What is your favorite ceremony to mark the wheel of the year, and what is your favorite season?
My favorite season is summer, kind of spring, summer. And I think one of the best things that we've done recently, that me and Sam have done recently, was being able to get to Stonehenge at the 60th gathering. That was as we drove onto the land, 2 hares ran past the coach. It was amazing. But my favourite ceremony is the winter solstice, particularly if I can get up to Bryncathley D, because with the summer solstice, there's always that kind of bittersweet thing of, yes, it's the longest day, and then it's downhill to winter. Yeah. Whereas at least with the winter solstice, you think downhill to summer, and it's just the return of the light. And I find that one of the most moving things. Yeah. And May Day, but everybody loves May Day and Belton anyway. So.
Yeah, Julie, it's been so. I mean, I've been trying to get you for a while. It's so. I still remember the first time we met at the Beer Oak retreat in Donegal. When was that? A year and a half ago?
Oh gosh,
you know,
no. Yeah, I think
3
2,
years.
3
3 years.
years.
Do you know what? I can't remember. But it was such a joy meeting you and Jesus, Sam, and it was just so lovely. And then of course we met at the 60th when you were co-facilitating making the little votive offerings. So it was just beautiful. Such a joy talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Are you coming to the summer gathering?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So listen, I'll let you say goodbye.
Otherwise, Marcella and Kathy will have me guts for garters. But yeah.
So I'll let you say goodbye to our viewers.
Okay, well, thank you very much, viewers, for tuning in, and it's been a joy. And Eimear is a wonderful host, and she didn't make me feel as if I was going to die of fright, so that's really good. And she didn't make me sing, so what's not to love? Thank you.
That'll happen the next time. Okay, so I'll chat to you in a second. I'll send you back to the green room. So thank you so much for your lovely comments. Just wonderful. So I won't be here next week because I'm doing a storytelling circle on the Hearth next Thursday. If anyone wants to join, information will be on the Hearth. And I'll be back in 2 weeks' time for another Fireside Chat. In the meantime, be safe where you are, and may your hearts be filled with peace within, even if there's no peace outside. But to hang firm and be well and enjoy the fruits and the hope that spring brings. So have a good evening, a good afternoon, a good morning, or if you're watching a recording of this chat. So until we meet again, slán go fóill.